In this lesson, we will explore one-point perspective again in a second version. In our first exploration of one-point perspective, we focused on how geometric shapes are two-dimensional and how using one-point perspective, we can transform these two-dimensional shapes into three-dimensional forms. Like you see here, a circle is a shape, but when perspective is added to this shape, it becomes a form, being a sphere, which appears to be three-dimensional, even though it is on a two-dimensional flat surface. In our last lesson, we focused on creating our form bursts. We cut out shapes, and then we used point perspective to transform these shapes into three-dimensional forms. In this lesson, we are going to be exploring point perspective a little bit further. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing our geometric shapes this time. And instead of only connecting to two corners from our center point, we're going to be connecting to all corners of our geometric shapes. Let's get started.
Alrighty, my friends, in our last lesson, we focused on one-point perspective by cutting out geometric shapes, then bursting them by using a ruler to create lines from our point all the way to the corners of our shape. These three-dimensional forms that are implied, they were once shapes, but then we use perspective to make them appear to be forms, are solid. What we're going to be doing in this lesson is a little bit more challenging. Instead of our shapes appearing solid and being made of paper, today we're going to be drawing our shapes, and we're actually going to be creating lines from our point to all corners of our shapes. So I'm going to move this out of the way. What you're going to need for this lesson is just a ruler, a pencil, and a Sharpie. You don't have to use a Sharpie. I'm going to use a Sharpie just so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. But basically what I'm going to have us do is we are going to start by drawing geometric shapes. We're not going to draw a circle for this one. So I am going to start by doing a point in the center, just like I did on my last one. That's our point to start. I am going to draw a triangle. You can use a ruler for this as well if you want to make your shapes really, really nice. I am going to do a square. And I think I'm going to do a long rectangle. And again, you can use a ruler for this. I am starting with Sharpie, but you might want to use pencil. So I'm just going to focus on these three shapes. Again, this is a practice of learning a little bit more about perspective and using a ruler. So these are meant to be practice, this activity. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do just like we did on the last project. We're going to go from this point all the way to the edges of our geometric shapes. This time though, when we connect these, we might notice our lines going through our shapes. So I'm going to start by doing the square here. So I'm lining up my ruler and I'm going from my point to there. Now I'm going to go from the point to the other corner. Now this looks pretty similar to what we created here. This time though, I'm going to connect to all of the corners of my square. So I am going to line this up. This is going to be really skinny. And now I'm going to do one to this corner. So I'm actually going to go through my square. And it almost looks like that square is bursting outward. It really, really looks three-dimensional. Now I'm going to do it with my rectangle. So I'm going to do the same exact process. Start from my point, line it up with the corner. This project is really important in paying attention to having your ruler lined up really nicely. Ooh, this edge here is going to be super, super narrow, but I'm going to do it anyway because I have that corner that needs to be attached. And now I'm going to connect the point to the corners of the triangle. And that is it. It's a little bit more of a complicated version of this that we've done here. But you can see that on our version 1, we did solid shapes, or solid forms, I should say. And on this, we do see-through forms where we can really see our lines coming from our point and hitting all of the corners of our shapes. This is meant to be simple. Don't try to use organic shapes. Don't try to use circles. You can try like a hexagon or an octagon or a pentagon to make it a bit more challenging, or a diamond, but keep this really simple. If you'd like, you can add in color, but what I mainly want you to focus on is just trying to use that 1 point perspective to transform your shapes into forms.